Hey, I wanted to let you know real quick that Friday Night Arcade shirts are available now on Amazon.com in all sorts of varieties. Help support your favorite D-list YouTube channel and pick up one today through the link in the description. And thank you so much for watching. This year marks the 25th anniversary of the release of The Seventh Guest. At the time, the game was critically acclaimed as a groundbreaking achievement in computer games and sold over 2 million copies. But does it still hold up after 25 years? Buckle up, kids, and see how your dad played computer games back in the early 90s on this edition of Friday Night Arcade.
My dear Mr. Dutton, welcome to my house. The arrangement is simple. You are to spend the night as my guest, and in exchange, I will give you your heart's most secret desire. And you know what that is, Mr. Dutton, don't you?
I require one thing of you, a special service, a task that I've set up for you.
The Seventh Guest was developed by Trilobyte and released in 1993 by Virgin Interactive. It's a cinematic adventure game focused mainly on solving intricate puzzles against the backdrop of a haunted house story. The Seventh Guest makes use of full motion video to tell its story intermixed between the puzzles. Solve a puzzle and you get to see the next clue to the story. I'll admit, I'm going into this one cold. I was aware of this game when it came out, but this was that era where computers that could handle these types of games cost a fortune, so I never got a chance to actually spend any time with this one. Still though, it's got that big box PC game charm, and I remember seeing it on the shelf at the store thinking, man, that must be cool.
Edward, I'm not sure we should have been here today.
Why? Because it's a spooky old house? Don't worry, dear. I'll watch out for you.
The story is kinda dark, even by today's standards. In a flashback to 1935, this creepy drifter, Henry Stauff, kills a woman, steals her purse, and then has a vision of this doll. He carves the doll and then sells it to a bartender. Buying a creepy doll from a mysterious drunken grifter at the bar for my daughter. That should end well. Anyway, Henry realizes he can profit off of creating these dolls and starts to sell a large quantity of them. But soon after, the children who have these dolls all start getting a strange illness. Fast forward to the present day and you take over as someone named Ego. You wake up inside Henry Stauff's mansion. You're not really sure how you got there, and for that matter, I wonder if the name Ego was a play on Freud's model of the human psyche, with your ID, ego, and superego. But I'll spare you the psychology tangent. Anyway, Ego wakes up in Henry Stauff's mansion with no clue of how he got there, and that's where you take over. The game shows you ghostly visions of the past, and you're trying to piece together what exactly happened. There were 7 guests invited to Stauff's mansion, but when they arrived, they found it deserted.
My, isn't this a cheery place?
The guests were all lured into a sort of game with Henry Stauff. Whichever one solved all of the puzzles and made it out of the mansion would have their heart's greatest desire rewarded to them. As you can see, the story is fleshed out in these pre-rendered full-motion video clips. As was the case in most of these full-motion video cutscenes from games of that era, the acting is all over the place.
I guess our host wants us to fend for ourselves.
Oh, I've tasted better fare.
At least he left his regrets.
I'll show you mine, if you show me yours.
I don't know,
Oh, it says that we're each to have a piece. Exactly the same, including the symbols.
Why, that's impossible!
If you've played Night Trap, you get the idea. Okay, so maybe it's not Night Trap bad, but Okay, so after sitting through like 20 minutes of FMV clips, here's how this works. You control Ego with the mouse. The only input you provide is pointing and clicking with the spooky skeleton icon. No WASD movement or anything like that. You move your icon around the screen until the icon changes. If you can move in that direction, the hand beckons you to proceed ahead. If you can interact with an object or there's something the game wants you to take a closer look at, your icon changes to something else. When there's a puzzle, you get this creepy brain guy. You want to solve a puzzle? Let's move around this room and see what we... Whoa! Okay, so that was pretty cool. Each time you move around, it's a pre-rendered 3D computer animation taking you from point A to point B, and it does this virtually anywhere you move around the house. Okay, so this may not seem that special by today's standards, but take a moment to appreciate what a freaking huge deal that would have been in 1993. The digitally created 3D environments all look rich and incredibly detailed for their day. I will say that it can be a bit awkward to move around like this though. All of your movements are also kind of slow and deliberate. Don't get in any sort of hurry, this is top speed, and oftentimes I found myself wanting to turn and look at something specific, like a painting on the wall or a door, but the game just sorta has a pre-rendered path you have to take depending on where you click. I have no control over where I'm facing. For example, when I was in the dining room, I wanted to turn around and check something out on the wall, but if I click on the side here, it just takes me back over to the door, and evidently presses my face right up against the handle. Cool. Cool. As you explore the house, you'll find puzzles to interact with. These puzzles range from relatively simple to bang your head against a brick wall repeatedly until you lose consciousness difficult.
Here's food for thought. Be warned, though. Your mind will be gorged before this night is done.
This really is the meat and potatoes of the game. Exploring the house, solving puzzles, and then your reward for solving the puzzles is another piece of the backstory, and more parts of the house open up to explore. Sometimes it's pretty straightforward, like this telescope puzzle, where you just have to follow the letters through this maze to spell out a sentence. Other times it's complex as all heck. Like, would you guess what you're supposed to actually do with these chess pieces? As you interact with the puzzle, little voiceovers taunt you with cryptic clues.
Finding things a little grating.
And this was before the internet and wiki walkthroughs. You're on your own, buddy. To say much else about these puzzles or how the story progresses would be a disservice to the game and the overall experience. Instead, I dare you to go through this without using a walkthrough at least once. You could spend an hour on just one puzzle.
I don't think you can do this.
So regarding whether or not this game is worth playing today, well, it depends on how much you like solving puzzles. The puzzles really are the main focal point of the game. Today's audiences may not even classify this as a game. It's virtually impossible to die, at least as far as I could tell. You just keep trying to solve the puzzles. If you get stumped, you can click down at the bottom of the screen to reset the puzzle, but there are no penalties for failing, and you can save your game whenever. Solve a puzzle, watch part of a movie, repeat. That's really all there is. And although the story is a little dark, the FMV sequences are too cheeky to really be considered scary, and some of the other stuff designed to creep you out just comes off as campy and kinda silly. Like these hands. I could see how someone today would find this kind of boring, but I think it's only fair to put something like this in perspective. Adventure games and big box PC games were a thing in the early 90s, and they were awesome. It's important to remember too, a game like this came with all sorts of extra goodies in the box to flesh out the story and make the experience all the more interactive. The Seventh Guest is a little light on the extras, but along with the manual, you get stuff like the Stealth Files, a set of newspaper clippings and additional material to sink your teeth into if you want to find out more about the backstory. Nowadays, you just download a game and play it with a tutorial built right in. But back then, this sort of stuff was all part of the experience. Another groundbreaking achievement with this game is that it was the first computer game to be released only on CD-ROM. That was a big deal. It would have taken around 900 floppy disks to fit all of this game's data, including the pre-rendered 3D interiors along with the FMV sequences. And speaking of CD-ROMs, as I played this, I couldn't help but think that there was something awfully familiar about that staircase you see at the beginning of the game. Aha! It was another one of those games Nintendo Power fibbed to us about. Back when the Super Nintendo CD-ROM attachment was in development, The Seventh Guest was featured in the magazine as one of the potential release titles. Yeah, don't hold your breath on that one. Anyway, don't forget the sound. The additional storage space afforded by the CD-ROM gave plenty of extra room to have something more than just bleeps and bloops. George Fatman Sanger served as composer for The Seventh Guest. George was also the composer for Zombies Ate My Neighbors, Maniac Mansion, and Wing Commander, among other things. Although I'm not overly fond of most of the tracks on this one, there's certainly a lot more involved than just your standard 8-bit chiptunes.
How does it feel to be the first living thing to set foot in these dungeons in... I can't remember how long.
This game also had a massive budget. It was the first game ever to cost over $1 million to develop and produce. It's no wonder Bill Gates once referred to this game as the new standard in interactive entertainment. Nowadays, big budget video game titles cost almost as much as Hollywood blockbusters, and I would venture to guess games like The Seventh Guest paved the way for that to become a reality. So back around to the same question, is this game worth playing today? Well, it's worth trying out, at least for the history, if nothing else. I could understand if it's not for everybody in today's video game landscape, but I feel like if you're into puzzle-solving adventure games like Shadowgate or The Uninvited, give this one a look. It's also been re-released in several different formats, so it's not hard to find. There was also a sequel called The 11th Hour. So I'd be curious, did you play this one growing up? What was your experiences with it, or what was your favorite big box PC game? I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time on Friday Night Arcade.